thank you everybody for being here. I'm Craig Turner, president of World Trade Center Buffalo Niagara. Very excited about this program today. I hope everybody's enjoying our beautiful spring day. One of our speakers is Glenn Scott from Rich Products Corporation, who is actually south of Charlotte right now. So he's the only one that didn't start today in a bad mood. But very glad you could be here. I'm going to make my comments really short because we've walked through the conversation and we've got a lot to cover here. But you know, this is a topic that is very, very important to not only our region, but is near and dear to the hearts of many of us on the call here that have spent a lot of time working on it. So we're looking for a good discussion today. It's very interesting right now for those of us on the call, and everybody's here because they're interested, obviously, but for those of us that have been working on logistics and supply chain workforce for a while, we have kind of what I have been calling an unprecedented opportunity right now, because a lot of people out there, a lot of families that their kids are thinking about what careers to go into are not, they just generally don't think about logistics. One, because they don't understand it, but two, because the guidance counselors, the people that are presenting them career options, they don't know about it either, and they're not thinking about it either. So, but what's happened in the last 12 months, logistics has been turned upside down. Because of COVID and the pandemic, and all of a sudden, people who are used to just ordering their Amazon package and it shows up at their door, all of a sudden can't get toilet paper, and then we can't get bicycles, and then you can't get lumber for your home improvements you're trying to do, and all through last year, all of a sudden, supply chain was right in everybody's face, and we kind of had to deal with it, and it was a great opportunity to explain what was happening. So obviously, we all know the supply chain world has caught up, and you know, as it got later in the year, things started to even out a little bit more. And then what happened? An ocean freighter got caught in the Suez Canal for 8 days. And the numbers, the dollar amounts, the things that are going, we're not going to be able to get paper products. All of a sudden, it's in the news again. So we've capitalized on it, and we've been really talking about the importance of supply chain. And what was kind of neat is there was a great story was we, as soon World Trade Center and some of our members kind of got together as soon as that ship got stuck there and started to reach out to try and get some answers. We heard a month. It was going to be a month before they actually turned that ship around and started to open things up again. They did it in like 8 or 9 days, which is fantastic. And it's not only that, but it was a great testament to this industry and the supply chain workers and how they made it work, and the need for solutions and being on the, you know, being able to make decisions on the fly. So it was a great story. It's a great opportunity. I think our timing for this conversation is right on in our region. And I know the numbers from the US side. There's 37,000 people employed in our region in logistics and supply chain. I'm assuming the number is close on the Canadian side to that. So you're looking at 60,000 people in our binational region that are employed. And the interesting thing that you're going to hear a lot today is we need more. We need a lot more. So there's really two purposes for this session today, and we have a great panel. One is to kind of lay everything on the table and say, okay, here's what exists, here's what needs to exist, and here's how all of the organizations that we're talking to are approaching it. And two is to really showcase the need and the opportunities. We're going to record this today, so anybody asks a question, just know everything's being recorded for playback. But the opportunities in this industry here in the region and globally are through the roof. And like we always like to say, from the beginning of time to the end of time, you're always going to need to move something from point A to point B. Whether it's ships, rail, truck, or some kind of Star Trek contraption where you're beaming things back and forth, you still need to move the things, and they will always be these jobs. So let me turn everything over to our panelists here, and we have a great group. I'm going to introduce them by name and their organization or school, and then I'm going to let them kind of talk about why they're on the panel here. But we've got Chris Bigouette from the Charter School for Applied Technologies. We've got Dr. Denny from Brock University, Dr. Kwandrans from Niagara County Community College, Dr. Jim Kling from Niagara University, and we've got Glenn Scott from Rich Products Corporation. Real quick, just ground rules for today. We're going to let it run. We don't do a Q&A at the end. A lot of you have been on our webinars before. If you have a question, I encourage you just type it right in the chat box while the topic's on the table, and we'll just moderate and try and work it into the conversation rather than waiting until the end. I think that's everything I have. Let's start. And I'm going to have the speakers. We'll go in the order that I just gave. Kind of give a 90 seconds on who they are and why they're on the panel. So Chris Bigouette from Charter School for Applied Technologies.
Everybody, glad to be here. So again, I'm Chris Bigouette. I teach actually social studies at the Charter School for Applied Technology, which is kind of odd, but I have a logistics background in the military. I'm in the Army Reserves as a logistics officer, and that's how I kind of get into this. Along with some strong connections to a few logistics businesses in the area. I started a logistics club here at the school with the help of the Trucking Association of New York and Speed Global Services, which is literally next door to us. And that turned into a class. After I was certified by New York State, the class was also certified by New York State. And then now I'm working with Karen at NCCC, Niagara County Community College. We have a supply chain management 101 course there. And that's just the first iteration of it. So it's going well, and that's why I'm here. I'm hoping to bridge the gaps between us.
Thanks, Chris. Let me move across the river to Dr. Cho.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Denny Cho. I'm a professor of supply chain management at Brock University in St. Catharines, Ontario, the other side of the border. I have a first two degrees, actually, bachelor and master's degree in industrial engineering. So engineering is my background. And I did my PhD in business administration from McMaster University. I've been working in higher education for almost 30 years now. And with Brock University now it's 20 years. And I teach and research in supply chain network and operation management and also business analytics.
Thanks, Dr. Cho. Dr. Karen Kwandrans from NCCC.
Hello, everyone. So I'm over workforce development. I am also been appointed the director of the City of Niagara Falls Workforce Consortium, recently appointed to the Niagara County Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy Committee. I'm a board member on our Niagara County Chamber of Commerce, and I'm a member of the Superintendent's Advisory Council for Occupational Education in the Buffalo Public School Districts. So workforce development is what I do, and certainly the more people we could get into supply chain management, developing a diverse workforce, and making sure we could get these employer needs met. That's why I'm here.
Thanks, Karen. Dr. Kling.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jim Kling. I'm an associate professor of supply chain management at Niagara University. Been there for at least 20 years, and graduate of the University of Maryland at College Park with a PhD in transportation, which was really my first love. And I've since also developed quite an interest in inventory, and I do some consulting, but mostly I teach here at Niagara University in the undergraduate program. We have an MBA program in global business, and we also have a certificate program.
Thanks, Jim. And then we'll finish up the intros with Glenn Scott from Rich Products.
Hi, thanks, Greg. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Glenn. I'm the Vice President of HR for our manufacturing sites in the US and Canada. So about 28 sites and 7,000 associates. As Craig mentioned, I'm based out of Charlotte. So the only snow we have right now is about 1 inch of pollen on our cars, but I'm sure no one's crying for me today. So hopefully I'll send some weather your way. The reason I'm here, similar, I think, Chris, you kicked it off well, is we are hiring. And I will tell you, I spend 80–90% of my day on just getting quality candidates into our sites. So I think based on where you want to evolve the conversation, Craig, I think the recent stimulus has had an interesting effect on our acquisition pipeline. And we're having to think different ways about how to attract and retain given the competition for labor out there. So I'm looking forward to this.
Thanks, Glenn. And I'm going to come right back to you with the first question. But before I do that, for anybody that's interested in putting questions in the chat, I always like to point out Mike Desmond is here from WPFO. So we do have media on the call, just so you know that. We're thrilled that he's here because, as we said, this is a very, very important topic. So we appreciate you being here, Mike. So we didn't do it in order as we did the introductions, but if you look at who we have on the panel, you can see there's a purpose to it. There's a flow. We have what we call a pathway. So we've got all the way from Chris in high school teaching the students about what logistics is, all the way through workforce development, through undergrad, through graduate school, and then Glenn in the private sector as the user of the programs that we're going to be talking about. So I'll start with you, Glenn. Looking at what we have and the way this is set up and seeing that we have supply chain kind of covered from all these different perspectives, as someone looking to hire in the Buffalo Niagara region, what's your level of confidence that we're on the right track and that we have this covered and that you're going to ultimately have the people that you need?
Sure. Well, it's a big question. So I think I'll break it into, what skills perhaps am I looking for, and then where am I looking? Because those two together hopefully means we have success. So I think with our previous conversations on the topic, I'm excited about the near future of supply chain, because I think more and more, whether we're talking, most of my job is manufacturing, but our group also covers broader supply chain and warehousing, demand supply planning. More and more, we're looking at technologies. We're the old school term of operator, I think is rapidly going away, because we want someone who does more than just operate something. We want someone who understands a process, who understands data, who can interface with, Blue Yonder or Salesforce in some cases, or you name it, that can take action, because technology connects us, right? It gets us closer to our customer and our consumer. So why wouldn't the people who make and ship our products also be able to have some input into that? So I think, the core skills that the region teaches are good. And I think, Chris, with your military background, I grew up in an Army family, so I'm very, very biased towards that. But someone who has some other kind of either work or leadership experience, who understands what a team is like, not just I can work well with others, but how do I work as part of a high-performing team? I think both sort of the so-called soft and hard skills together are what our customers are demanding, much less, my business partners. In terms of where we're looking, anywhere and everywhere, we're certainly looking professionally, of course, with universities and other organizations mentioned. But we're also looking at some non-traditional career paths. I can tell you one of our best machine operators and technologists actually came from a hair salon. You go, well, how does that compute? Well, she owned her own business. She understood P&Ls. She understood process and how to please a customer. That sort of skill can translate. Now, that's not our normal hire, but I'm looking at any walk of life, because we are having a demographic shift and a labor shortage that I think is quite unusual. So I think as we evolve this conversation, Craig, I'm curious, on sort of the supply side of this, with universities and high schools and other vocational programs, where you see the supply, and can I tap into that selfishly, in a better way as a hiring manager?
Thanks, Glenn. Let me take that to Chris, actually, because Chris, you said something in our pre-call that I thought was interesting. We were talking about where the people going into these programs are coming from and why. And you said the most important thing is they need to see a job at the end of it. From this perspective of this pathway that's been created in the region, what's your level of confidence that the people that come to you, the students that come to you in the first place, whether at the high school or the community college, that's a reality, that they can see a job, not only a job, but continuing education and a career? What's your level of confidence in that right now?
Not too high, I'm going to be honest. And I think the reason being is that my main job is in many ways, is to open the door for them to see what's out there. So we started off in the club with what are the jobs that exist? What do they do? And really, I try to be a little more on the fun side, because it's a club. I have 9th and 10th graders. I mean, we're talking about freshmen and sophomores. They're not even sure if they're fully out of puberty at this point. Let's be real. They're trying to figure out their lives. They're trying to figure out who they are and where they want to be in the world. And then you get into juniors and seniors who take my class, and they're not sure that they don't know that these jobs exist. So I'm showing them these different doors, pathways they can go in, because we all know with supply chain and logistics, there's so much out there. And, I talk about where they could work, and they have certain perceptions of certain places in the industry, and that tends to taint things a little bit. So I'm trying to remove those blockages that are blocking their ways into thinking that, there's different ways you can go about this. And I know Karen could probably speak to this more in terms of the workforce development. I haven't seen it, mainly because this is my first time doing this with NCCC, but I don't know if there's jobs for them. I keep hearing it, I keep seeing it, but I don't know if it's hard for them to see the light at the end of the tunnel that, hey, if I complete this course or I complete this certification, that's going to make me better suited. And I will say that makes it a little bit harder sometimes. I mean, a lot of these kids are taking the course here at the high school because it's me, and they know me, and we have built a relationship, but I don't necessarily know that that's the case all the way around. And I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, no, it's good. And before I check with Dr. Cho on the Canadian side with that same question, Karen, Chris kind of referenced your role in all this. Where are you at the center of all of this as far as your confidence level on this pathway? Because you and I have spent a lot of time talking about pathway.
We have, educational offerings at all levels are so important, because we have individuals looking to start a career for that entry level. We have employees that need upskilling. We have all those career changers right now, and those looking to move up in an organization with a bachelor's or master's level. So those multiple entry points are the key to capture all these students. But like Chris said, we have a little bit of an identity crisis of, what job will this get me to? And we have to do a better job of connecting with businesses who are going to say, we have work experiences for them, we have internships, we have mentoring opportunities, because we need to make that contact to keep them engaged and retained in the programs, and for them to know that they have a job waiting for them, or an employer to see, this is someone I really want to bring on. So my confidence level is, let's put hopeful, that as we have these conversations, more businesses will sign on to giving work experience or some kind of engagement at an earlier level. I'm working with the City of Niagara Falls High School. We'd like to see supply chain management as an offering right in the high school. And that means I'd be looking to businesses for pre-apprenticeships and apprenticeships, internships, mentoring, and speakers and tours, because we can't say we need employees, and Mark Lurie, superintendent, can't say I need better graduation rates, and I can't say I need students. We have to mix this all together more collaboratively. So hopeful is where I'll end.
Thanks, Karen. Dr. Cho, what are you seeing on the Canadian side relative to this?
Well, I can only speak for the Canadian side. In terms of, letting very young people, their younger age, to know that what's available, especially in supply chain management and logistic area. I don't think we don't do much in Canadian side. I mean, as you may know, that the Canadians, not only friendlier than Americans, but also we are much slower in terms of taking initiative. So I think that's it's a weak area in terms of promoting supply chain management and logistics to young people, especially in a high school area. So I don't see many, cases, but in terms of course, that knowledge transfer and the training in higher education, I think we are improving. I think it's more business schools and institutions in Canada have started realizing the importance of supply chain management and the logistic area. Especially actually it's our institution, Brock University, administration was the one actually who pushed faculty members like me to create or develop program, both degree program and non-degree programs. So it's more like a continuing education kind of thing. So in terms of training and knowledge transfer, I think we are improving. And there are more universities and institutions actually developing programs in supply chain management and logistics. But one area actually, I totally agree with what Glenn has said before. It's in terms of training, sometimes we think about, okay, supply chain management, logistics. We only focused on hard, that knowledge and skills, right? But I don't think that's the case. It's soft skills becomes very important. As Glenn said, it's a leadership and also interpersonality, communication. I think that becomes very important because supply chain doesn't just include, hard area like logistics and transportation. It's also, it touches on like, customer relationship management, a little bit marketing area. So it is very important for us to train our young people in higher education to provide both soft and hard skills, right? So I think that's very important. And when I develop actually courses and program, I think we're gonna put actually those two areas, making sure that we balance those two areas. So when we actually create product, when I say product, I'm talking about graduates, and they will be ready for the marketplace as exactly what Glenn said.
Thanks, Dr. Kling. Jim, I'm going to twist the question for you a little bit because I want to pick up on something that you said in the pre-call, which is, in the end, yes, there are jobs out there, but the question is, what's the job? You can teach them a curriculum, but it's such a specialized, each company has such a specialized operations that communication with the companies is essential for you to prepare the students the right way. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. And I think I'll get to that, but in the general sense, I think we're doing a much better job getting people to understand what supply chain management is, that it's an exciting field, that it's important, that there's a lot of opportunities. The disconnect, I think, comes from, okay, there are jobs, what are the career paths? And that's, and the breadth of different industries and businesses and job types in the field right now is very hard to articulate as well as train people. You look at how supply chain management has broadened over the last 20 years. And so are we going to go into procurement? Are we going into operations, warehousing, inventory? Are we going to be analytics? Are we going to be managing people in a transportation company? I mean, all of these are legitimate career paths, but trying to prepare students in the whole is what I see as the challenge. And I don't know how we can maybe identify 4 or 5 possible, common career paths in supply chain management so students can see not just the job. I think that's at the university level, that's what I see is, students will be interested in supply chain. They see a job, but they don't necessarily see a long-term career for themselves or what that looks like. And so they hesitate.
Glenn had the story about the hair salon owner that made the move into logistics, and a lot of Karen, I'm going to start with you on this. A lot of what you and I have talked about and the programs that we've started to create that Chris has come in on now have been along those lines. Where are the students that maybe have hit the ceiling, or where are the workers, where are the people that have hit the ceiling in their industry or have no advancement opportunities and can translate their skills over to this industry, which is desperately needs workers? Where do we get them? Where are the students and the new workers coming from? And from your perspective, how do we get them? How do we entice them and show them that this is so important?
Well, this has been the challenge. And I have to say in Niagara County, we have a really collaborative, supportive workforce development group between Mike Cassell, who's on the call for EDC, and Glenn, who's on the call for Niagara County Employment Training. We have this is so important to the county as an in-demand occupation that we have funding for the training to be paid for. And we're still having difficulties getting them into the classes. So, I mean, we also have a youth grant that this is one of the courses that they're eligible to take through a youth grant. So we have a lot of recruitment. We have a lot of paid social media advertising. We have the county workforce groups all publicizing it. And we still are having trouble at the entry level of what we're actually talking about. Chris has been so great with his time doing Zoom meetings to interested students, trying to get them to say, yeah, this is something I might be interested in. But we're still having a few problems. This week alone, one student thought supply chain was ordering things for restaurants, supply chain restaurants. And so we had to back up out of that conversation. So we've tried every kind of title, or catchphrases, but there are some students interested in the innovation of like Amazon or FedEx. So if you could try to tie it into something that they know, that's a good way to get them interested and get them in. So, I mean, I've said a lot, but to answer your question, this is the dilemma we have. We've offered the course in summer. We've offered it this spring. I have 2 people working on trying to recruit people, and the enrollments honestly have been low. So I'm not sure what we could be doing more, but again, I think it's touching them earlier in high school, middle school, and really not having this as a what are we talking about when we're saying supply chain management and logistics. It shouldn't be something that everybody's wondering what that looks like. And we did that Understanding Industries meeting, which, for those of you who weren't on it, one of the businesses actually took his laptop, went through his warehouse, showed us accounting, showed us HR, showed us computer operations, machinery. And it really filled in the gap for, especially the people from my organization on the academic side, on the credit side, as to what we're talking about and what that warehousing looks like in all the jobs available and the diversity of the jobs and the entrance points. So, I mean, it's got to come with a higher level of awareness for sure.
I think there's a reach issue, and I think there's some investment would be important, because I know that whenever we do the logistics presentations, we got students and parents eating out of our hand. Once you show them how the Amazon box gets to their house, and show them the port and how the port works, and the shipping and the rail and the truck, it's fascinating to them, and it works very well. Chris, I want to kind of bring that question over to you too, because everybody else on the panel has there's the ability for people to come to them. There's a supply chain program in the Cali. You at the basis level have to sell your club and your program to some students. How do you kick that off? How do you give the sales pitch on day one when students are looking at what courses they're going to take at the charter school?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, because I will say part of it is I talk to as many as I humanly can, and I've educated counselors here. So I've sat down with the counselors who meet with every single one of these students before they make a decision on what courses they're going to take. And they all know what I do now. The first couple of years was rough. The first year I taught it, I only had 13 students. This year was, I won't even count. I mean, I had a class and we had enough people, but COVID's been a little bit tricky with numbers this year. So next year, I actually just got my numbers for what I'm going to have next year. I'm only allowed to have the one class because I do have a social studies to teach, and I have 20 students, which is fantastic. That's a great sign. I chalked it up to 2 things. 1, more people know about it, and 2, more of the administration here and the counselors know about it, and 3, they like me. So there's a relationship that's built, and Karen's laughing because it's funny. I mean, they know me, so they know, hey, Mr. Biggs is teaching this course. It's probably going to be kind of cool to learn about. And so, so I'm getting them in here, and even if they have no idea, they didn't even look at what the course outline was. They're taking it and they'll learn about it, and that can hopefully lead to someone maybe going right into the industry, going with me over to NCCC, or going and seeing Dr. Kling up in NU. Like that's the goal, right? That's what we're hoping for. I have had a couple students leave the class last year one of them was working for Amazon. He knew the job existed because he took the class. I had another student who was working at a warehouse, I forget the name of it. He ended up leaving it because they weren't paying that well. And that's kind of something a lot of students have said to me, is the perception that they've had from family members being in those jobs is like, maybe they don't pay that well, maybe the job's difficult. And I don't know if we want to go down that road of like what perception there is, but I've tried to manage some of those expectations of, you know, where they could enter into the workforce. You know, if they wanted to go right from entry level, or if they wanted to, you know, go into higher levels, as Karen was discussing. I mean, at the NCCC, I have a student who was working and he's trying to move up in his field. So that's that. A lot of it has to do with how we present the material. So for the ninth graders who come in, and I have them in the club, a lot of it has to do with, we try to make it as fun and as engaging as possible by going on field trips, which has been really difficult this year. So I'm trying to do virtual field trips, but I've had a lot of pushback from the industry because of COVID, and they're worried about me coming in there even and doing virtual field trips or videotaping. They're worried about sensitivity and security issues. And I understand some of those things, but I'm trying to like quell those concerns, because that's what gets people excited, is learning. It's like seeing it, being there, having someone hands-on talk to them about things. That really gets them excited and gets them interested in it. You know, just me doing the slide deck on the screen doesn't cut it. So they got to have that hands-on activity. And that's what kids want. Kids are sick of slideshows, people talking to them. They want to see it, they want to touch it, they want to be involved. And COVID's made that difficult, but my goal is next year, if things loosen up, you know, to have as many of those opportunities as possible. And the end state for the class, and it's been a really difficult one because we just started and then COVID happened, is to have those job shadowing opportunities, those internships, even paid internships if possible, because that's what they ask about all the time. What can we see this job? Can we do that? That's really what I'm hoping for.
Thanks, Chris. Just for a formal point of order, we will call Chris Mr. Biggs for the rest of the program. Glenn, I want to take Chris's challenge that he just put on the table and give it to you, because as Jim said, we go company to company, everybody's got different specialized needs. I imagine within Rich Products, you've got all kinds of specialized needs from department to department. So how do you, because you have to do job fairs and hiring fairs and things like that, how do you show the cool factor of the industry in getting people to come and fill these roles at Rich's, and you know, part of that is the job, what they're going to be working on, the availability of a job first, what they're going to be working on, and then compensation and benefits that go along with it, and career path. How do you encapsulate those for people that might not be in the industry but would be good for Rich Products?
Yeah, well, I agree with Chris's point about seeing the work. So depending on which role we're talking about, probably more for the hourly or the entry-level roles, perhaps, and some of the more advanced. We do have videos, because you're right, Chris, during COVID, even I don't go into the plants right now until I'm fully vaccinated. But we can still do video. I would also offer up that I think the relational component has come up a few times. So meeting people, again, by Zoom, who actually do the work, where it's not just sort of this static video that, hey, here's what procurement looks like. Well, let me talk to a manager of procurement and see that she's handling a commodities market for palm oil, right? That has global and regional components. I mean, that, to me, that's what gets people excited. There are definitely some cool things we can show them, but it's digging down to the work is cool versus the work is right for me. And that's where I think there's a dialogue, you know, perhaps a mentorship or something like that. And definitely internships and other, I want to create as many on-ramps as I can to our company, particularly from a DEI perspective. So I think there's a number of things that we can do, and continue to advertise what those roles are. So I can tell you, depending on, again, we operate in about 28 different markets. So the labor situation is somewhat different. More and more, no surprise, social media posting with some of those same videos, geofencing, where you know, for example, Chris, I don't know if I'd do it in a high school because of the age issue, but if we had like an associate's degree group, I could geofence a university and say, hey, if we're hiring and we're hiring supply chain roles, if a cell phone enters this market, could an ad pop up if you go on Google that says, hey, Riches is hiring? You know, we're looking at things like that. Again, it's interesting how much you can so-called target communities, but it's more about just providing information, providing it online, offline, through people. That's been our challenge, I think, similar to what some of the professors have said, is just getting the word out that we are hiring to all groups. And then of course, there's a second piece of it, which is during COVID, how do we make sure that we don't have transportation or other things as a barrier to get a job with us? So we looked at some creative solutions about how do we go where some of the communities are, or how do we perhaps interview in off hours to make sure if someone already has a job, they're trying to find a job with us, that we're not restricting them during the interview process. So maybe not any one idea works. It's usually a recipe in the community where we find success.
Thanks, Glenn. I want to take the last part of that question and give it to Jim and then Danny to weigh in on, which is the future. As you're as best as you can learning the needs of the companies, that's now and the future. But the students would be the same way. If you're training them, you need to train them not only for a job now, but the jobs of the future. And logistics is a very, very fast moving animal. So maybe start with Jim. What kind of trends are you seeing that are working their way into your curriculum to make sure that the students you train not only get a job out of Niagara, but they have a job 10 years from now?
Yeah. So Craig, it's a good question. And for a long time at Niagara University, we've really tried to take an approach as far as quantitative analysis goes to giving people a good numbers sense, giving them lots of common problems, Excel. We're trying to get into higher analytics. If it's in a general kind of purpose. We're not yet really embracing like specialty software, and we've tried some of this stuff, can we train people on a TMS system? That's hard to do. And again, you might miss the mark, right? A transportation management system is great if you're going into trucking or brokerage or something, but if you end up in operations or procurement, then it's not. So, we're trying to maintain kind of a general knowledge and aptitude of quantitative skills without being too specific. Companies often want us to be specific in an area, and I understand where they're coming from. They'd love to have somebody pre-trained in a particular software or expertise, but at least at Niagara, we're not big enough to do that.
Thanks, Jim. Danny, same question, because we do know that a lot in logistics, and we've talked about it a few times already here, that some of the manual labor type jobs are turning into technology, which is, they're still jobs, but they are require a different kind of training for them. So what are you seeing as far as trends going forward, and how are you interpreting those?
Well, it's when I teach very basic introductory supply chain management course, actually in the very first class, I start with actually showing our students different types of jobs and areas in supply chain management. So I can actually list about 8 or 9 different areas of supply chain management jobs. To start with, actually, I try to make young people in my class to get interested in one of those, of course, areas. And that's how I start with. And of course, actually, Jim mentioned it. So we cannot use a specialized software. Money is one issue. The other one is what happens if we train with one specialized software, and then the employers who hires our students are not using those. That's a problem. But we try to make students understand the main concept of process, as Glenn talked about. And then, especially we use actually basically Excel. That means Excel, you can do a lot of things these days in terms of modelings and everything. So once students have mastered in those areas, then they can go anywhere, okay? I mean, just specialized software, it takes some time for them to learn, but since they know the process, they know the fundamental process and concept, so they are able to actually handle those kind of things. I think in going back to actually, how we train our students, as Craig, you mentioned, it's supply chain logistics area is a very dynamic area. It's evolving every day. So I think it is very important for, that educators to have honest and continuous communication with practitioners, okay? We have to understand as educators what's happening in industry. If we don't understand, that means we are teaching wrong things, right? So it is important for educators, people like me and Jim and Chris and Karen, we need some help from, practitioners and of course, professional associations, because without that dialogue, honest communication, we may not be able to know what we train to our students. They would be future employees, right? So I think that's a very important part. And one way for us to do that as educators is what? It's get involved in their activities, right? If there are professional associations like, APICS, now they changed the name to, ASCM. Sometimes we have ISM. In Canada, we have a, organization called SCC Supply Chain Canada. So I think educators must get involved in those activities, okay? If it's not every day, maybe it's once a month, right? To understand what they are doing now, okay? And then we have to educate ourselves to teach our young people. And one way I did actually 10, 20, 15 years ago, about 12 years ago, that's why I actually went for a professional designation. So I have two designation now. It's one is supply chain, certified supply chain professional by APICS. The other one is actually the new one, CLTD, certified logistic, transportation, and distribution. So when actually I get involved in professional associations, which are composed of what? It's practitioners. Then I can bring actually what they are doing, the knowledge and the real life stories to classroom setting. I think that's very important for me, me to grow, but also important for our students to find out what the society expects, right? So.
Okay. Hey, Craig, can I jump in here real quick? And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I second all that from Danny. I think there's an opportunity to design, say, a small problem that could be done in class in 15 to 25 minutes. So it's got some numbers, it's got a little scenario. And so like my preferred method teaching is I teach a concept, then I have some kind of exercise immediately, go around, make sure everybody understands it. Hopefully they're getting the right answer kind of thing. And so this is a place that I think businesses can help us out with giving us some examples of a problem. Doesn't need to be a long case study. These are just quick little things. And it also is potentially then a way to get your name of your company in front of students. And I'd be happy to work with anybody, if you have like, hey, and I'm not talking about a big problem solve. I'm just talking about the kind of day-to-day things that people do in their careers that we can bring into the classroom on a regular basis too. Speakers and site tours are great, but they take a lot of logistics to work them out. And so from a teaching point of view, you need kind of regular routine stuff that we can bring these ideas to all of our students.
Thanks, Jim. I want to let me come to Glenn on this. Glenn, you're the user here, and Chris and Karen and I, on the workforce side have banged our head against the wall trying to get investment in everything we're talking about. I mean, if you're following it in the chat, there's a conversation going on about guidance counselors, and you know, and the fact that we ran that Karen ran the program, and a handful of the guidance counselors showed up. The ones that did loved it, and but getting into everyone's hands. So the rebuff that we've gotten, Glenn, is that here in New York, that logistics is not a targeted industry sector, which is very interesting to us. But the reality situation is that logistics, you know, is considered its own industry, but it's really a subset of manufacturing. If you know that every product that Rich Products makes, if it doesn't move and it sits in your warehouse, it doesn't do anybody any good. So I just wanted to kind of put that to you. So if you had, you know, the state, the county, whoever's ear that makes these workforce investment decisions, how would you, as the user of everything we're talking about, approach the need for to get this message into more people's hands?
Yeah, you know, probably my Irish heritage, I think about storytelling. And I think you started this hour by saying, you know, think of the past year. I mean, meal delivery companies exploded over the past year because of COVID. I don't think they're going to go away. I think Uber transformed into more of a delivery service than a transportation service. You know, I think it's finding stories that relate to people personally and saying, oh, by the way, there's about 100 logistics jobs I just described, from the people who dispatch the Uber to, you know, the restaurants, whatever example we need to have. I think it's also, you know, sometimes with government agencies, it's how they code things or how they think about different industries. And when I think about the halo effect, and Danny mentioned this of logistics, you know, it's not just the people in those roles, it's the suppliers of our components. You know, it's the trucks that deliver our ice cream cakes. It's just, there's a whole industry behind the industry. And I think if all levels of that were included, if you need to meet a certain number, or, you know, for this to be a focus industry, I think it's fair to look at that. And also, where are we going? We're going to individual deliveries of different products that people will still have retail, of course. But I think over the past year with the technology shift, the marketplace is now at my front door. It's no longer somewhere I have to travel. So I think the technology side of this would also be part of that halo effect that I would talk with governments about. I mean, something as simple as the COVID vaccine. I think we've seen the, shall I say, the multiple opportunities for how it could be better. That's a real life example where logistics experts, in my opinion, could have done a much better job with getting it to market.
Thanks, Glenn. Karen, on the same topic, I just want to give to you, because you're really out in the community shopping this. What would have made, and you said about the low enrollment, what would make it stronger? What resources do you need? And I want to give you a moment to talk about apprenticeship too, because that's a huge thing that we've been talking about.
Well, you know, I think until students, parents, and, you know, people in general have a better understanding of the diversity and the number of jobs available. I mean, in the chat, someone's talking about someone not knowing that, you know, this is a viable career. We're going to have our challenges. So it is getting those people together. You know, we're all here to prepare a workforce. So that's not the problem. The funding isn't the problem. You know, I follow labor market information and I follow hiring trends, but it still comes down to we have to do a pretty generalized course. Workforce development, we could be a little bit more agile and flexible. If a company had 20 workers that needed something very specific, we could do that in customized learning. But, you know, we're going to have to come up with a better way of doing specific job needs as well. You mentioned apprenticeship. There is not an apprenticeship title for any of the true logistics, warehousing, freight kind of titles. You know, there's manufacturing titles, there's trucking titles. So that should tell this industry something very important. We don't have a state title and we don't have a federal level apprenticeship title for supply chain management and logistics. Craig and I talk about it all the time. It's a heavy, heavy lift to get that going. And we're able to do it in our region because we do have the pathway. We have high school, we have non-credit and workforce. Our college have submitting paperwork to do the 2-year AS, leading them right to UB, leading them right to NU. So we're perfectly positioned to do that. But in apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship, both require a lot of lift. But it might be what's needed to get people in the door and retain them. So, Craig, we'll keep talking about it, right?
We will. Thanks, Karen. We're gonna start to wind down because I do want to kind of try and end around 3, if not at 3. But before I give everybody kind of a last thought, I want to just ask Jim and Danny one question, which is this whole piece about the interaction between your programs and the businesses themselves. So you can actually see what the specific needs are. What does that look like? How do we accomplish that? Is it a survey? Do we set up meetings? Do we recruit businesses that are willing to talk about it? How do we actually make that work? We've talked about that for a long time.
Well, I'll speak to Niagara University first. Our dean, Mark Frascatore, I think is on the call, is very supportive of the program, and we've set up a very large and successful advisory board. And so we're matching students with people on the advisory board as mentors, and I'm working with them on curriculum issues. So I think it's networking more than it is surveys, I guess it would be my comment.
Okay. Danny, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's for the same question. It's networking is one important thing, but I think it's a willingness, of educators, willingness of practitioners, industry people, whether they want to work together. Now, it's a higher education is no longer luxury. We know that it's expensive. It's not a luxury thing. It's a necessity thing nowadays for young people's future career. So educators and industry people must work together in order to minimize the gap between what's produced and what's required. So I think that's very important. So to me, it's whether as an educator, a professor who trains students, whether I'm willing to work with industry people for our future of the students. I think that's very important.
Thanks, Danny. So, well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for the dialogue in the chat. Thanks everybody for taking their time. I know if there's other questions that people want to ask offline, we can connect with any of you, and we appreciate you giving your thoughts. I want to give everybody one last thought. Call it what you want people to take away from the conversation today, and I think we'll do the pathway. I think we'll start with Chris, then we'll do Karen, then we'll do Danny, Jim, and we'll end with we'll close up with Glenn. Chris, what are your final thoughts here?
Putting me on the spot here. No, I think the big final piece for me, and if we're looking at getting students into jobs, is we need to make sure that we're sitting down at the table together, the industry and the educators, and then we create a relationship. I think Dr. Kling said it. Network. I say relationship because I need them invested in the community as much as I'm invested in the community and our schools invested in the community. And that will allow us to figure out the best ways to work for them and for us. But we need the pipeline of a job at the end of the tunnel for these students. They need to know that they can get a job and it's going to be sustainable for their family or themselves, and move forward from there.
Thanks, Chris. Karen, what's your takeaway for people today?
My takeaway, similar to Chris, is we have to make people more aware of what's at the end for them. What's the prize, and that has to come from industry telling us what that prize looks like and what that prize makes and what that career progression looks like. But I also want to tell businesses right now on this call, I have funds for my WIOA youth to do work experience paid for by the grant. So if you want to give a youth a chance, they've been through some pre-employment things, so they're ready to go out into the workforce, and it's just to give them a glimpse of what supply chain management's like and what's behind your doors. So if anybody's interested, please reach out.
Karen, where's the information on that and all the criteria and everything?
Right on our front page of my landing site for workforce development, it's called the Goals Program, gaining academic, occupation, and leadership skills. And there's a contact number for Rhonda Bivens-Taylor, and she'd be more than happy to talk to you.
Great. Thanks, Karen. Danny, your final thoughts.
Yeah, main theme of supply chain management is partnership and collaboration. So when working together, actually, efficiently and effectively, we can create the original pie much bigger, and we can share, and then it's a win-win situation for every partner. So I think we can get something from there. Actually, when we work, educators, industry people, and government, local government work together, I think we can do it. We can actually make the original pie much bigger, and it will be a win-win situation for everyone. So I think partnership and collaboration, I think that's the most important thing.
Thanks so much. Dr. Kling?
Yeah, this is an interesting conversation. It makes me think that we need to focus a little bit better on how we're coordinating all these things. Like if you benchmark, say, SHRM, Society Human Resource Management, right? They have college chapters. They have an active organization locally. They have a pretty clear identity. They have literature. And there's a lot of supply chain organizations out there. And, you know, I've seen some go across the chat line here, but it's not a coordinated, clear focus that we have. And I'm not saying that's going to be easy to do, but it would be great if we could have a more directed perspective like SHRM or the American Marketing Association or something like that. That's from the college perspective.
That's great. Thanks, Jim. Thanks. Glenn, we'll give you the final word here on this. And I just want to say for our webinar series, I mean, everybody went kicking and screaming into the virtual world last year when we had to cut out in-person meetings. And I know some organizations are getting back to in-person meetings, at least starting to explore it. But one of the silver linings here is that Glenn's such a great resource, and we would not have brought him in. We wouldn't have flown him into Buffalo for a morning breakfast for an hour. So the fact that we can have access to him is fantastic. So Glenn, appreciate you being here from Charlotte, and we'll give you the final takeaway today.
Sure. I appreciate that, Craig. I think I echo all the points made. And, the Buffalo and Western New York area, I think the theme that emerged for me is it will take each of us. None of us alone has a solution. So I think there are roles for each of us, government, industry, education, and other, to point us to our ultimate goal, which is employing more people in this industry. And the other thought I have is it's never too early. So Chris, if I drew out, our talent supply as a supply chain, I think as early as 9th and 10th grade isn't too early when I look at other countries and how they do apprenticeship programs, say in somewhere like Germany. So Craig, I think after this, think through maybe is there a model that we could try, just to get this going where it emerges from a discussion to maybe actual initiative. So I'd like to consider that.
Absolutely, and I think that's a great point, Glenn. I think part of it was having this conversation. We would have used to call getting something on paper, but having this conversation, I think, is an important thing. So again, very much appreciate everybody being here and giving your time today. Thanks for everybody that participated. We have a few things coming up. We have May 18th is the beginning of our spring 2021 session of our TAP program, TAP Niagara, which is the Trade Accelerator program. We run a virtual program for companies in the Niagara region in collaboration with World Trade Center Toronto and the Toronto Board of Trade. And we're excited about kicking that off. It's a 6-week program. If you have companies that are interested in the Niagara region that are interested in advancing their export opportunities. It's the best program in the country, and we're pleased to be a part of it. We just wrapped up our similar program on the U.S. side, which is our Global Business Academy, and we'll have another one coming up in the fall, and some information will be coming about that shortly. We're very excited. May 24th. We're doing a virtual tour of Multisorb, and the registration is up. We're still putting some details on the registration page, but the registration up. We're very excited. I think probably most of you in the room are familiar with Multisorb. It's an interesting story because a few years ago they were purchased by the filtration group, and they have made dramatic changes to their operations and really put supply chain at the forefront. It's a great story. But what happened was, when they were ready to start rolling this out and show people what they did, COVID hit. So nobody knows about this yet. So we're very excited. I encourage you to because I've had the opportunity to sit through it. I encourage you to join us on the 24th. It's going to be a great tour. So with that, I want to thank everybody again for being here, and thank to the speakers. And if anybody I mentioned we recorded this, it'll be live if you want to show it. If you're a company and you want to take the presentation to your HR people, we really encourage you to do it. But the recording will be live in a couple of days, and we'll let you know when it was. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy the warmth outside. I hope y'all have a nice day. I think everything's starting to melt now, so which is good. But thanks for being here, and we'll see you hopefully on the 24th.
Thanks, Greg.